announcement for the hotel so Mike hears it. Don't mess with any hotel stuff. You saw me say it to him, right? Okay, we're good. So the next stop coming up is going to be Brett Chance. After that will be lunch. You have an hour for lunch. There are 2 restaurants in the hotel over on the other side of the hotel. There's also restaurants up and down the street, kind of any direction, unless you go to LAX, I guess. Other than that, lockpicking's open, hardware hacking's open. The contests in hardware hacking, that's HeboCon and the security obstacle course, are both set up. So today you build your HeboCon robot, tomorrow you'll fight with it. Security obstacle course is only open today, so if you want to do that, do it today before they close at 5 o'clock. If you're interested in CTF, that is also up and running in the Hacking Village / CTF room. As always, chill out room for games and relaxation right next door to CTF. At noon, according to the schedule at least, Lockpicking Village is doing an intro to lockpicking, so if you want to get your feet wet with lockpicking, jump in there right after this talk. Brett, where'd you go? There you are. Up next is Brett Chance with Doorking Around.
Hi guys, my talk today is called Doorking Around, Bypassing Access Control Systems Without Touching a Door. So a little bit about me, my name is Brett Chance. I do incident response and application security for a living. My hobbies are security research, and that focuses more on web security, application security, and mobile application security. You can find my research on my website, brettchance.com, and you can find me on Twitter at Remind. I'm a member of DC562. It's a local SoCal DEF CON group. Feel free to check it out, dc562.org, if you're interested in all of that. So the intro to this talk. I've always found telephone entry systems and access control systems extremely interesting. I think like a lot of people in this room, we like to kind of get an idea on how this technology works behind the scenes. I mean, we get that you have to touch a fob to this thing, and we have to, enter a pin into a keypad. But how does that actually work? How is this all connected in the back end? And what kind of security issues could be presented? So early January of this year, I spent a little bit of time, looking at these systems. And there's a ton of, manufacturers for these things that put them out. And finding which one to take a look at was kind of a challenge. So I just decided, one night I took my dog out for a walk, and I went around the common loop that I take my dog for the walk, and I said, whatever system I see the most, that's the one I'll take the first peek at. And that ended up being Doorking. That system was extremely prevalent in my neighborhood and many other places. So about Doorking, they're extremely popular in the access control world. They do a ton of gate operators, ton of commercial buildings. They're basically all over. This talk focuses much more on their telephone entry systems. You'll see them primarily in apartment buildings and other buildings, around. You probably come in contact with one of their systems. Either, you have this at your own apartment, or if you have this or if you use this at a business, or if you went to a friend's apartment and they had to budge you in, you're messing with one of these systems. So you've probably seen one of these. So generally my research game plan is to get a hold of the device or the system and take a look at it. In this case, I wasn't able to. The actual systems are quite expensive, and to find a used system, my journey there wasn't fruitful, I would say. There are a few on eBay, but when I try to contact some of the sellers, a lot of them are just enclosures or the panels and trying to verify, hey, does this work? Is this a working system? They kind of want you to pay up front before you find the information out. So I had to kind of go off what I had. And without the system, all I really had was the manuals that they put out, the video tutorials that they give out, other security researchers who have done a lot of good work already on the hardware and that sort of thing. As always, I like to approach my research projects with the whole "don't be evil" idea. Be diligent, and of course, have some fun. Don't make it too stressful. So Doorking's telephone entry systems. Kind of went over this a little bit, but they're installed in tons of apartment systems. You can find them in commercial businesses. You can see them in plants. Extremely large homes where people have to be buzzed in, that sort of thing. Their systems exist in seaports, even on the Mexican border. They have gate operators and other systems like that as well. The Long Beach seaport here in California, they have a system there as well. They're used to control mainly access to doors and gates, but they do handle elevators as well. The entry provided to users is primarily with keypad entry with pins, or with a key fob, or with telephone authorization. That being, that last one being if you're arriving at an apartment and you need to get in, someone has to actually physically buzz you in. That's what I'm referring to there. So programming. I got to say I'm not an expert at this stuff. I'm certainly not an expert at Doorking, but I've done a fair bit of reading on this stuff. So programming can be done a number of ways. You can actually do it at the system's keypad. That would be the keypad here in these images there. Local programming at the panel. You can actually open the enclosure, and there's a way you can plug in to the actual system and then start programming it from there. There also is a remote programming software tool that you can log in with the telephone number of the panel and the master code and connect to that. That's done via, depending on the configuration of the system, through the internet or through a modem. So protocols and services that are programmed that you use to program this are modem to modem, serial connection straight to the panel, USB connection, wireless connection for systems that are installed that can't have cables run to them. Of course, TCP/IP. The two I'm going to focus primarily on in this talk are going to be Doorking's Internet Modem, or IM server, and their DKS cellular server. So the IM server is basically, it takes your computer's internet connection and connects it to the system's modem. Basically makes it able to be programmed over the internet in an easy fashion. This, they say this is way better than the modem-to-modem connection, and it's much easier to handle. The cellular system is a bit different than this, but it's just using cellular signals to connect and do the same stuff. So how this actually works. The computer actually connects, it's connected to the internet, and that connects to the Doorking server. And from there, on the back of the Doorking server, it's connecting to each system's phone line. You can see that these systems are often set up by installers. So, actual installation companies that set these things up, drill them into walls, and then they set them up for either the manager of an apartment, or if it's a commercial building, whoever's going to be managing that appliance. So something I found interesting, let me go back real quick. Graphic is really small, but at the bottom left, it says register user ID and password. That kind of got me thinking, where is this registration system? How does that work? And, how are they handling their data there? So I stumbled onto Doorking's registration system for these systems. So I dug through a few manuals about this, and it's a really interesting site. They have you set up and register. Whenever you open the Doorking software to program these panels, they ask you to register. That's to register the software. It's not required. It's completely voluntary unless you want to use the IM server or the DKS cellular service option. If you're using those, you have to do it, and there's no real way to use those services without registering on this system. So I got a bit curious here. I registered a test account. They don't block you from doing that. So I just created an account with the username Ted Norman and entered some fake profile data. I noticed that there's this entry systems tab on the right, and I clicked that, and it showed me the options that were the name of the actual entry system, the telephone number directly to that system, the master code of that system and the type of service it was using. I thought that was super interesting. That's giving all that back. One, the master code, which I thought really, at first I was, that could be interesting. I wonder, how they're protecting that data. So I went ahead and made my own and basically played around with it, and I thought, this would be interesting to take a look at. So I wanted to dig in a little deeper on these requests to see how the system was managing the requests and how they were validating sessions. I thought I typically use Fiddler, Telerik's Fiddler. Burp Suite's another good application to use, but for Fiddler if I'm just not messing or actually around with the application. So here's the raw GET request to view the profile information of this system. So if you're going to access the profile information of the account, this is just a straight GET request to the system's user account page. But at the bottom, I saw something extremely interesting that kind of caught my eye, and that's it's the cookie. The only thing I saw here, and you might be noticing it here that might be an issue, is the only thing validating what user is currently logged in is this cookie, and that is the user at Ted Norman. This like looked at me like, anybody can change this at this point, right? So if you go to the actual problem, anybody can change that username and log into any account. If it's a valid username, you can modify that cookie, and then you'd have access to the information on that account, whether that would be the profile information, the entry systems on the account, including the telephone number to the panel, the master code of that panel. So it's not really protected at all. There's no validation. There's no, you would expect some authorization parameters. You would expect session tokens. You would expect, a multitude of other things. But that wasn't present, and it kind of made me really, really think, what could go on here. So I basically created a second account, and once I created it, I entered more fake profile information there and another entry system, and I used tamper data to change the cookie value to the original account name, the first account name. And the first account name's information popped up, including the profile information, the entry system for that account. So this kind of was like, whoa, so if there is any valid account here, I can basically pull up that account and get all their information. That's probably not a good way to handle this data. So the impact. There's some serious impact. Any user can gain access to an account's information by guessing a user ID. If it's a valid ID, you got their information. You don't need a password. You don't need anything like that. You just need their user ID. You can get access to their full name, their email address, their mailing information, phone number, and other information on the account, including the telephone entry systems information, the name, the description of what the actual system, which usually includes some information about the location, the phone number directly to that panel, the master code, and there's actually also, I didn't include it here, but there's also a recent billing information that you can look at too. So the following information on the account will be modifiable: profile information, entry system information, email address, and password on the account. That's right. So besides there not really being any validation here, it doesn't require the password to make any type of changes to the account. So a malicious user could effectively lock out someone from their own system. It's kind of crazy to think about. Now, a user in that situation who had their account locked out would be left to deal with Doorking and actually call them up. I'll get to that in a little bit, while that might not be the easiest venture. But for now, let's continue. So Bruce Willis, deep impact here. With the right configuration, an attacker could use the telephone number, the master code of the account, and actually remotely program it. They could either receive data or send data to the panel. This could be done by connecting to the system via a modem or with the actual account, with actual Doorking's remote account manager software. Systems not programmable online, they'd be able to be programmed locally by actually going up to the keypad. So with any of my research, I like to get an idea of what an attacker could have done, like what someone could have done if they would have found this and leveraged it against the system. And in this case, one of the big things I thought was perhaps a Python script of some sort that would load a big word list, primarily of first names, common first names, and that sort of stuff, and thrown it at the profile information link. This script would then basically just interchange the actual words that are in the word list at the cookie level, and if there was a valid account, it would save that account. It would save that account to the side. This theoretical script could then look for. Doorking includes this nice little HTML snippet on the profile page, which actually I've included here, that shows the active entry systems on the account. So no one would have to actually go through this manually. A script could pull out any valid accounts that are already there, save them to another text file, and an attacker would then leave the scenario with a list of valid accounts that have systems on them, and the account and those systems details to log into them. So scenarios. Going forward here in the next few slides, we're just going to assume that someone's already done this. Someone already has this information. Someone's already been able to, whether it's local programming, someone's been able to use OSINT capabilities to pull together the location of these actual panels, or they've went through the entry systems and were able to connect to them remotely. So local programming. Local programming would basically be going up to that system, typing in information to program either new users or information like that. Typically, in this scenario, you're thinking of a bad guy adding a user, adding a new pin so he can compromise the integrity of the building, basically get access to the system. They can do this by adding a pin, adding a card, adding a key fob, and they can even change the master code of the system actually, while they're there. To program these systems, the master code switch needs to be selected or needs to be switched on, and that's actually inside, so they would need to get in the enclosure. There's one small hitch, though. There's a lock on these systems. You can see in these images. Some of their systems actually have two locks. They seem to be the same key, though. I'm not quite sure what that's about. So I'm not a great lock picker, but I think they can be picked. But don't worry, they don't really need to be picked. You can get the key on Amazon, and you get access right away. So there's no real worry about that. It's not Prime, though. So so let's just assume that our bad guy here didn't have the forethought to order this in advance. How could they use this information remotely? So with the software, the user could log in directly to the system and program it. A sneaky way of doing this would be to modify an existing user, an existing user's PIN code, or downloading that data off the system and just having that user's information, and they can go to the building to themselves. They can also just create a new user for themselves and have direct access to the building that way. Now, they could also use the send all data feature on Doorking's on their remote programming tool, which would basically wipe the system clean of everything there, which could cause a problem to the actual residents of that building, not being able to open doors or gates and that sort of thing. But I would think an attacker here would want to be a bit more sneaky about that. One other thing to mention here, the system would, when you back up the information, there would be a lot of information there. There's a ton of information on the residents of the system. You would have names, their codes, often their numbers, and that sort of thing, which could be very interesting to an attacker. So, minus programming, let's just say someone had the telephone number and a master code to a system, and they were able to track down the local location of that system, the physical address of that system. How would they get in without doing any type of programming? Doorking has this interesting thing called tone open numbers, and other systems do too. But basically what it means is you can call the system the system's phone number directly. And you'll hear some beeps, some programming beeps. You can enter the master code, follow along with the numbers here on this image, and you would actually be able to open doors to the building directly through the phone, which an attacker could do really easily. I mean, we're talking a burner phone and, not really having direct trace to them. So that could be another issue. So when disclosure isn't quick and clean, I titled this slide, and it's interesting. I would like to think that most of the research I've done has been pretty easy to remediate with the client, with the company I'm dealing with. In this case, it wasn't so. The initial contact was on January 8th. They had 2 support emails on their website. I emailed them directly, and I waited for a bit. Never heard anything back. So I've seen a lot of security researchers turn to Twitter when nothing else works, and that worked here. They gave me the direct number to tech support and the CEO's email, which I thought was, interesting. I mean, I don't mind talking to him, but it seems like he might not want to handle this stuff. But I said, sure, I'll email the CEO, and I did, and I didn't hear back, which I kind of got a bad feeling. If I'm trying to contact someone a bunch, and I'm not hearing anything, I start to question the security of their architecture as a company, the security of are they paying attention to things like this? If this was there, I mean, we're talking basic session management. If this is broken, what else could be broken on these systems? And these are security products. I mean, it seems just like the antithesis of security at this point. So I never received another email or anything, so I was left to call tech support. So about your registration system was basically how this phone call went. I called a tech support guy. He was friendly, but the general questions like what kind of system are you using and all that stuff, and you have to navigate that call carefully. There are a lot of security researchers who have wound up in a lot of trouble, legal trouble, for disclosing their findings to companies, and I didn't want to be another one of those. So I made it very clear I found something. I wanted to help them, and wanted to disclose it so they could fix it and protect themselves and ultimately their end users. So the call with tech support went well. They transferred me to someone who handled the systems and will be able to deal with this. Unfortunately, I got his voicemail. I tried over the next 2 weeks to try to reach this guy, probably 6 to 8 times, quite a bit. I started wondering if he was on vacation, and that didn't seem to. I wasn't quite sure. I wasn't sure if they were ignoring me or what was happening. You never really know in these situations. I know a lot of people think the worst when they're sending emails and not getting responses. Am I going to be receiving a legal letter soon? Is someone going to call me and want to talk to me? Is there going to be a lawyer on the phone? That type of deal. But I persisted. I was able to eventually call back and get a hold of someone and who helped me out. And we talked about the issue. I kind of explained the security, how their security was compromised, how their end user security was definitely compromised, and how, technically people, install these systems because, they want to be more secure than a standard lock and key situation, but installing their system here could open them to a more wide security issues. So I walked him through everything, told him what I found, disclosed my findings, and he was very nice about it. So timeline here, I reported this on January 8th. January 31st, I actually had the call, and shortly after that, I received an email from their VP of engineering. The email was a little interesting. The graphics a little blurry, but I'll read it, some of it. Let's see. I'm the VP of engineering for Doorking. Unfortunately, my expertise is not software, but is on the hardware side. My engineers responsible for software and web development are on vacation. When they return, I will instruct them to look at these issues you have brought up. I just want to assure you that Doorking takes seriously the security of the information our customers place on our servers. If there's a security problem, it will be fixed immediately. That's, kind of double speak there. They're on vacation, they can't do it, and it's going to be fixed immediately. Hey, not my circus, not my monkeys, whatever. 3 hours later, I received another email from Doorking. This happened to actually be from the guy I left all these voicemails for. Never called me back, but he was available to email me right after I talked to someone, and their VP found out about the issue. He kind of asked me some interesting questions. One, I think, what version of Windows are you using? That's not really applicable here. It's an issue with your web application, how you're handling these sessions. Not really anything I'm doing on my end, but okay. So this thing wasn't resolved immediately. I figured 3 weeks. I was expecting 3 weeks, and it kind of right in the middle, about 15 days. I asked them to keep in contact with me, as I generally do. When I disclose findings, I'd like to know if it's being patched, when it's being patched, and when it's all said and done. I like to publish my findings if I think they're decent and it warrants publishing. This was one of those cases, but I never heard back from them. So I just kept a close eye on the system and just, every day or so would just refresh to see if there's any type of difference, any type of changes in the session management. One day I did actually see there was a hash that popped up next to the cookie instead of just the cookie. And then I wrote an email and I said, hey, I noticed something different. Did you guys implement a patch? And they confirmed. They said, yes, we did. I said, okay, great. So then I published my findings 3 days after that. So length of exposure. This is an interesting one. It's kind of really hard to pin down exactly when the system came into inception. The earliest time I have is 2013. That's based on their manuals on their website as well as YouTube tutorials that they publish online. I have to believe that it existed before that, but the safest bet I can assume is 2013. It was vulnerable up to the second week of February. So once again, all of their information for customers that use their internet-based systems were completely exposed for that period of time. Anyone could have done what I did and decided not to publish it, decided not to talk to them about it and fix it, and decided not to give a talk and instead replicate some of those bad guy steps that we talked about previously. And yeah. So these are my references here. Anybody have any questions? Sure.
So did you have an opportunity to actually do user enumeration to find a list of potential users?
I didn't do that because I think that probably in their mind crossed the line, and unless they gave me permission, I wouldn't want to run an automated script against their server. But I could. The web application seemed very old to me, so I think user enumeration, there wouldn't have been anything that was blocked anyways. But it was, like I said, it kind of covered it in here, but it's definitely possible, and it would have worked, I'm pretty sure.
And when you did the two users to A/B test, did they both have the same default passcode, or was it right?
It was different. Yeah, it was different. Yeah. I always kind of watch for that because I have had experiences with that where it's either a cookie that didn't come out or something else. But no, in this case, it wasn't the password. And to your point there, even if it was the same password, there's nothing in that session kind of calling to a password. It's just the username. So.
I mean, the same master key for the actual access control box.
Oh, no, they were different codes. They're different. Sorry, I misunderstood you. No, they're completely different entry systems, different fake numbers, different fake master codes even. Sure.
Did the Amazon key vulnerability
No, if you go back, let me just go back to it real quick. That's them actually selling it on Amazon. There's about 4 other vendors that you can or 4 other places to buy this. I wish I had the forethought to 3D print some of these and toss them out here, but I didn't.
That looks like a really aggressive bid anyways.
And yeah, you can, not sure if you can read it, but all Doorking compatible. So every Doorking system. Yep, definitely.
Did you actually validate their fix? I mean, was the hash graphically sound?
So I haven't done that yet. I've started to take a look at it here recently, but I like to kind of, if if I was kind of waiting so long to publish it, and I'm just like, hey, can you fix this so I can post it already? I'd really like to do this. And so whenever they said they fixed it, I took them at their word. Once again, not my circus, not my monkeys, and I'll let them say, hey, if it's fixed, it's fixed. But I'm taking a look at it now, and I'm going to kind of verify exactly, because honestly, I could definitely see that. I could definitely see that being a. I'm sure there are.
Maybe just scratching the surface.
I'm pretty sure. Like I bet there's some serious. I would think that for anything I did, this is basically all I did. I didn't dig any deeper. But if I found a session issue like this, I'm sure there's tons of issues in this site.
If you log in twice, do you get a different hash value in that second cookie?
Yeah, I mean, even the form fields, I mean, you can, I mean, are they using any info validation to be injectable? I mean, there are all kinds of stuff going on.
Right. Yeah. I mean, yeah, definitely. I mean, you're talking like cross-site scripting. You're talking, even more than that. CSRF, even when you get down to it. There's a lot that could be there, and I'm really interested to find out. Unfortunately, I don't think Doorking would appreciate me doing that. But yeah. What was your question one more time?
Well, you had two different accounts, but that's not even the point. You log in once, legitimately the way you're supposed to,
Right.
with your test account. You get a hash value in that second cookie. You log in a second time, you get exactly the same cookie.
I think it keeps changing. I think it changes. I think that's what I witnessed whenever I looked at it. I'd have to look again though.
So you log in the second time, you use the first time's hash cookie. Does it still work?
Interesting. Yeah, I mean,
Is the length of the cookie exactly what the length of a SHA-1 or SHA-2 56 hash is? Or is there some extra stuff that maybe
Or
is
does the
involved?
session even time out? You want to get that hash there.
yeah, that's true. I mean, there's a lot more to poke on this, and I'm gonna. I might be back up here, or we'll see. Yeah, we'll see. I'm really interested in their other systems too, their gate operators and their other access control. I focus more on the telephone entry systems today, but this does impact some of their access control systems as well. So there's a bit of cross coverage there. Any other questions? Sure.
When you got that second email with the question about what Windows version you're using, at that point, do you even try to explain the situation again, or you just write it off?
Yeah, I had serious doubts before that second email, and that email kind of solidified my opinion at that point that maybe they're not understanding what's happening here and understanding security as a whole. I'm sure their devices are doing whatever they say they do. I haven't looked at them, but their website really made me really.
Did you reply to his email?
I did. I did not tell him what version of Windows. It was 10, by the way, but no. Yeah, I am. Debian and Windows. A little bit of Debian. Any other questions? Sure.
One more. So you mentioned that their web app looks outdated and kind of terrible. Had you considered running some sort of SQL injection attack to get user names?
No, I didn't do anything. I didn't do anything that I thought would have been a breach. So that's basic stuff. That's cross-site scripting. Running any type of SQL injection on their system would have definitely violated certainly a couple laws, I think. And yeah, I don't want any bracelets, so I'm good with that. Any other questions? No other questions? Okay. All right. Well, I hope you guys enjoyed the talk. And if you have any questions, I'll be outside back here for a little bit. But yeah.